public hearing for the special events and permits. And we will have a presentation from Ms. Robertson.
Previously, at two different meetings, you considered some proposed changes to City Code Chapter 18, which is the City Code chapter in which some requirements for the permitting process for special events and demonstrations are located. In January, on January 2nd, Council held a public hearing on the proposed ordinance, and previously on December 18th, 2017, City Council had looked at the ordinance on first reading. You have moved and seconded a copy of the ordinance, and the only modifications you've made so far are some clarifications to the provisions regarding open burning and open fires. But in the council agenda memo that I provided to you, I tried to address some categories of comments on which you previously heard remarks from various members of the public, and give you some information and background about why these categories of provisions are in the ordinance and what your options may be for making some further modifications or adjustments if you would like to do so. In your agenda materials, there is a copy of the proposed ordinance, which is the document that you are considering through your public hearing. You also have, for informational purposes, a copy of the standard operating procedure, which is the administrative regulations for the permitting process. And in the event you should make some changes to the provisions of the proposed ordinance, to the extent we need to, we would administratively adjust the regulations to reflect those changes as well. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them, but you've reviewed the ordinance on two previous occasions, and so I think you have a pretty good understanding of what's in there.
Okay. So any questions from council?
I think as you've outlined here, the main things that were items for discussion is what you've outlined here, and so we'll hear from the public, and then we'll kind of just make sure that we confirm any adjustments based on those outlined.
That's right.
Okay.
I do have a question for clarification, if I may. Ms. Robertson, on the point number 4, advance notice period, the ordinance is written now. It establishes permits to be submitted for review 30 days in advance if event will not require street closure and other conditions, and 60 days in advance if it will require any of those things. And then you cite as an example of the city of Richmond, Virginia, required applications 45 days in advance. Do you know whether that was conditional upon street closures or not?
I believe that they do draw some distinctions. The key thing here is that you want to make sure that so once you allow for small group exceptions and you allow for spontaneous demonstrations, what you're left with are larger events that probably do take a little more time to plan, and for the ones that propose to close some streets, those in particular may require some additional logistical efforts. So the idea here is to leave yourself enough advance notice to take care of the larger events that require some amount of planning, but it's very important that you leave in an effective small group exception and spontaneous demonstration exemption, because you don't want to allow the advance notice provision to take away all ability of people to react to events or to have demonstrations or gatherings that don't implicate public safety or large-scale logistical issues.
So the small group exceptions then would not even have any kind of notice?
That's right.
Okay.
So that's right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. to open up, public hearing.
I just want to make one procedural notice that we have typo. Several
Yes.
typos. If you don't mind me mentioning that now.
In going over this further, you all haven't made any adjustments to the ordinance since you considered it in December, but in going through it, I've noticed that in section 18-25, which is the violation and penalties section, there are a number of provisions that we only wish to make unlawful if they are done as part of an event. So, for example, rendering an area, climbing on a tree or a fence or that sort of thing would be unlawful if done as part of an event. So items F, there are 4 places, F, G, J, and K, where there are lists of things that are prohibited, but the intention is to only prohibit those things during an event and not to have a broader prohibition on those things